whatever nature you have near you. So it's like whatever you have access to, just start by going there and sitting. Don't do anything else for like 20 minutes. And even if that feels like sometimes that might be too loud, like your head might get too loud to just sit there and do nothing. But like do your best to just leave your phone in the car, even your book in the car, like whatever it is, and sit for 10 minutes, sit for 15 minutes and see what comes up. And then maybe the next time, like go for a short walk.
Hi, I'm Christina Barcy. Welcome to the Boss Goddess podcast. This is your invitation to step out of the hustle and into your purpose and passion. What's my secret? Podcasting. This is how I've up-leveled my life on multiple occasions when I was ready to bring my dreams to life. And it's how I help my clients realize their big dreams. This is where you become the boss goddess in your niche and gently bring your dreams to life. Did you know podcasting is a clarity companion? By just going through the process of creating your podcast, you will become more clear on your path forward. And what follows clarity? Confidence. If you're ready to take a step forward that follows your authenticity, meets you exactly where you are now in this moment, and will guide you forward in a creative and organic way, then I encourage you to explore what a podcast created by you could look like. You can get started with my free Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting guidebook, where you'll receive 5 days of gentle guidance and a resource to your inbox that will get you started in exploring this option as your next step to clarity, confidence, and maybe even the very foundation that will become your next brand or business. Just go to boss-goddess.co/activate or click the link in the show notes. One of the things that I fell in love with about podcasting when it first came into my life were the infinite ways to be creative with it. But then my second podcast, which is the one you're listening to right now, showed me the infinite benefits it creates for my own well-being as the creator. My journey with this podcast has definitely served me in this way over the years by creating the space for me to expand my openness, to become more authentically me, and even to discover my own areas of misalignment, thanks to some of my generous guests. And speaking of guests, my guest today has found a beautiful way to connect with himself, his hobbies, and with the place he feels the most at home, outside in nature, by using the art and practice of podcasting. His name is Jeff Large, and much like me, he also has a podcast production agency called Come Alive Creative. And we found ourselves in these monthly meandering conversations about what we value, how to stay true to that, creativity, and keeping things going in our businesses. And to my surprise in getting to know Jeff, I learned that he also experienced some burnout, much like myself, and a previous guest we recently had on the show, Penny Cox. He also found healing amongst the wild terrain of nature. And a fun side note, Penny Cox was introduced to me by Jeff Large. So this episode is a great reminder that what we need to heal and reconnect with ourselves and our well-being might be a simple creative practice or a walk in the woods, or for most of us, just simply going outside. As you listen, I invite you to check in with what you value most and get curious about whether you feel that your day-to-day is in alignment with that. Are you incorporating that into your day, the things that you value most? Or in other words, where can you add one small action that might just feel good? Where can you give yourself more permission and space to have fun, to be creative, to maybe have a project that is just for you, or to express something that you love with the world? Here's my conversation with Jeff Large. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi.
Hi.
We're here.
We're here. We made it. We're in different time zones. Jeff's in the middle of his day, and I am just starting mine. So the vibe is always a little different in those two parts of the day.
Yep, I've had half of mine take place so far and been randomly trying to touch base with my family in the little intervals that I've had, but it has not been successful so far. So maybe after this interview, I'll get a chance to touch base with everybody.
Oh, well, let's start there because I know family is like high on your value list.
Hmm.
And we're going to talk a little bit about just like how we prioritize things because that's what I love about your approach to, business, work, personal joy, and things like that. And one thing that is always consistent when we talk is we talk about your family and your day with the family. And you have little kids and then you have some kids that are over 18 too, right?
Yep, my son just turned 20. So
That's amazing.
yeah, it's pretty fun.
And then how old's the youngest?
The spread currently is 20, 13, 5, 3.
Wow. That's special.
Yeah, it is. It gives you a range. I joke. It's like you go from everything between like making the mental transitions of, okay, how am I going to handle my life trajectory to this person was mean to me at school or my friend I'm not getting along with to, hey, play this board game with me to I want to eat a banana. Like it's like all over the place that you're just shifting gears. And so it's definitely can be taxing at times, but like in the best way possible. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and I love that perspective because again, whenever we chat about family, you're like, it's fun. It's so fun. Like I love that idea of just seeing it that way. And
Hmm.
and I think overall, I think why we became friends because we met on LinkedIn.
Hmm. Of all places.
Of all places, just this, which we can dive into. But I always find it interesting when a connection is made sort of in this very, like, I don't know what to call it, like whitewashed place, meaning like just sterile place, maybe is a better
Hmm.
way to say it. Like just this random, like, faceless, in a sense, energyless, like spaces where connections that are genuine are a little harder to come by, that are not trying to be transactional. So those are always interesting, but I get a lot of those. Actually, you're like maybe the fourth person in a row that I've invited onto the show. That's someone
Oh,
I've
cool.
met through my inbox or through LinkedIn that I've like energetically felt something there. But my point is to share that you're very curious. I think that you lead with curiosity. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. I've always loved learning. And then I would say over the last probably 2, 3 years, curiosity has become a default. I don't know if you want to call it trait or virtue or whatever you want to say, but it's helped me because there's an element of me that I know can be judgmental or for a long while, I would feel like things had to be done a certain way. And that probably leaned more into my planner side and my builder side because I really do love operations and that sort of a thing. But to change that for the benefit of myself and the people who are close to me or people I'm in relationship with, anywhere from family to clients, being curious has proved to be a lot more beneficial and helpful for everyone.
I often relate it to kindness. It's a
Mm,
kind way to walk through relationships and life, and for ourselves, it may be even more so, like when we're curious about things that we're not happy with
hmm.
versus going like, why is this not working?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's a huge one. Like instead of just being
Yeah.
mad about the thing, just being like, "Huh, what's going on here? This feels off." Or like, why do I feel this way about this situation?"
Yeah. But I see that happening, one, in how we were able to connect, but also in how you approach your life with family, and then how you approach your personal life with work and then hobbies. And this is going to lead us into your podcast that I want to talk about today
Hmm.
because it's a unique podcast called Outdoor Sounds, and there's no interviews. There's just nature and an exploration of sound devices is my take
Hmm.
on how it comes together. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about sort of the inspiration for that and how that got started and a little more about what someone might hear?
So spring-ish of 2023 is when it launched, and so it was the year was 2022, and I did the whole business thing that everybody, if you're an owner in this space or an entrepreneur, you always get the phrase thrown around: work on your business, not in your business. And for the
Right.
most part, it's helpful. That's what you should be doing as an owner or a CEO or a leader or whatever, is doing more of the vision stuff, the vision work, relieving constraints, like that type of a thing, and working on it, helping the people that you're working with succeed. And I did that very successfully for probably 3 quarters. And by quarter 3, I was like so done because I wasn't making anymore. I wasn't creating. And there is a huge piece of me that even though I am owner, and even though a huge part of me of being an agency owner is to help other people build, like I find that if I'm not making something, whether it's physically with my hands or music or my own podcast and that type of a thing, I get kind of burnt out. And so that's what I was feeling pretty heavily. And at the time I was just looking for other things to do. And I backpack a lot. I love hiking and backpacking and camping. And it's something like you mentioned, the family, we integrate into the family. I do a ton of on my own solo stuff or with friends. And I was like, well, this is interesting. Like the whole idea of field recording kind of came up. I don't remember exactly what prompted it. The other thing that interests me is within the space, like I read a couple articles about how white noise podcasts were like blowing up at that time, which was so weird to me because I'm like in the B2B interview thought leader. Like that's what we live and breathe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Narrative, like NPR-esque stuff, all this full blown high end things. And I'm like, somebody's literally just producing that and they're making
Yeah.
a living off of this. This is so fascinating. And so I started to research a little bit more into field recording, like what does it take? And ultimately I moved forward with it, and we can travel down whatever rabbit hole makes the most sense. But it required a lot of like equipment research because it's a completely different world than just spoken voice. It required a lot of research in terms of post-production because again, to
Mhm.
produce it is a completely different world than a steady volume level of spoken voice. And then there was just the whole personal and other elements of kind of what it's allowed me to do and kind of what I've learned since then. So that's the runway into it, at least. And then, like I said, and then
Yeah.
it launched. We recorded multiple episodes, and then I've been releasing pretty much weekly. I think I took off last summer to just get a focus on recording. And then I
Mm.
let that sit for a little bit, but otherwise it's been weekly since we've launched.
Yeah, I think you have over 100
Yeah.
episodes released.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something
so
like that.
there's
We're
a
like on a 104 or something now. I don't know.
yeah, I was just looking at it yesterday, so I have that top of mind. One thing that you said that I thought was really interesting, one, that you found your way towards this project through a version of burnout that I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. And what's interesting is that that rhetoric around, don't work in your business, work on your business as a founder or whatnot. Ideally that's supposed to lead you to less burnout, right? Like, because
Mm-hmm.
you're not inside being operative. But it's interesting that it kind of led you towards some burnout
Yeah.
because you were missing the thing that brought the joy of the
Mm-hmm.
reason you started in the first place, right? Like the reason we start these businesses in the first place is to be creative
Yeah.
for most of us, for a lot of us at this like mid-level agency podcast production level. And I want to talk about that briefly just because I think there's a misnomer or a misunderstanding or maybe just misrhetoric around like how to heal burnout, like how
Mm.
burnout happens, because we think it's like, okay, we need to do less. I need to do less. I need to like clear my plate. I need to just do less. And in actuality, it's more about doing something that feels purposeful and doing something that feels creative and doing something that brings the feeling and the experience that you want to have. And I think when we do too much of the other, when it's not in harmony, when we don't have like the right ratio, I think it's different for everyone
Yeah.
what that ratio looks like. But I think when we don't have that ratio in play, then we start to feel drained. In my experience, and I'm hearing that in your story, do you feel like that's part of what you experienced?
I feel like it's an interesting thought to challenge clearing the plate. And I think clearing the plate is a piece of it, but if it was the only thing, it definitely would be an oversimplification of the problem. Because to me, like I've experienced burnout in that situation, and it's like I'd take that all day long, opposed to other kinds of burnout where in personal life I've also experienced burnout, but it was like down to like a breakdown level at a couple different points, which was
Mm,
extremely foreign for me because if you go into like personality tests and everything, like I know very much so, I'm very confident of I'm a driver. Like I just get stuff done. You stand them up, knock them down. I get a lot of
mm,
fulfillment and joy and motivation from hearing a problem and a goal and making a solution to tackle it. And I prefer the challenge, but that was different. That was a different level than what I described with the
mm,
podcast per se. So I think it's part of it. And I agree with you that part of it is like the ratio of how are you spending your time. And then the other thing that came to mind that I don't feel like I heard was the part of it is like just even processing through what you are going through too, like giving yourself
Mhm.
the time to work through the thing that could be causing the burnout or that is hard plays into it as well. Now, given I'm no expert in any of this stuff, but just from my own experience living this and kind of reflecting on it a lot and getting my own help and work done and that type of a thing, like I'd say probably is some mixture of those things.
Yeah, no, I think that's a valid reflection. And it is worth noting that the processing is maybe the hardest part.
Hmm.
Because for me personally, like it takes time and it comes through layers,
Hmm.
as most things do when you're processing something that needs a bigger perspective, perhaps, or bigger shift, or bigger reflection, or might be more than just a symptomatic moment.
Hmm.
Might be something like where the ratios really do need adjusting, and it can come all the way back to like, am I in the right role? Right? Am I doing what makes sense still? It can really like point to a lot of questions or a lot of epiphanies even, but I think
Yeah.
that's really case by case. But the processing part is maybe the part that needs the most support.
Hmm.
But I do think that part of that happens nicely when we have a creative process. Because process, right? It's like baked in
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. And for some people, that's sports, or for some people, that's something active, but you're kind of combining the two because you're hiking and you're going out into a space that feels good to you because you feel very connected to nature from what I gather.
Hmm. It's true.
And so, like the environment alone, and there's science behind this, like being within nature, like as human beings, it does heal on a cellular level. So, you've got that going, and then you've got something you enjoy, and then you're doing something creative as well. So, all of that to me is a nice sort of landscape to have the processing happen without needing to sit down and like do a bunch of, journaling or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really granular reflection.
Yeah. I would interject. I think part of it is however people decide to do it, of creating that space like you're talking about, where for me the quiet of nature creates that space and I reflect on whether it's those epiphanies or aha moments. Like a very traditional spot that people get it is in the shower,
Yeah.
where when you walk out of the shower and you're like, oh wow, I gotta write that down. Or another one, like an infamous one for me, was when my youngest was younger and I would walk her to sleep, and just being in the dark room pacing
Mm.
back and forth as I was waiting for her to fall asleep and drift off. I had some of the best ideas for the business or life or whatever it was, just in that quiet space. And
Yeah.
I think it's harder to find if we're not intentional about it, just because I won't get on a soapbox, but there's so many things that can distract us on a regular basis. And very often we want to be distracted because life is hard and there's a lot of things to deal with. And sometimes you just are like, oh, I just want to binge on this thing or watch this, or I'm going to scroll for a while, whether it's intentional or habitual or whatever. If we're not purposely creating that space, I do feel like we miss out on something, a chance to, the same way that like our brain fixes itself when it sleeps, like how you
Yeah.
need to decompress those toxins. And that's a kind of a thing. It's almost like a mental time, like an awake time, to be able to just let things percolate, let things float. And it reminds me a lot of books like Rick Rubin's The Creative Act or The Artist's
Mhm.
Way. Big Magic, I think, by the same author that did
Yeah.
Eat, Pray, Love. That was an excellent listen. I listened to that one on Audible. And so a
I
lot of
think I
those types of
suggested
things.
that one to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really liked that one a lot. That was good. There was like a few things where she got a little wonky on her. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. But for the most part, I took in, I liked about like 85% of it. So,
Yeah, I think that's true of most things. Like, I'm an anti-guru
hmm.
kind of. I don't like to follow anything like by rote. And I think that, we take what we can in the moments that we're experiencing, and it makes sense in the ways that it does. I share that now just to say, like, anyone who's listening who's like, okay, like, I want you to make your own decision. Like, I want you
Hmm.
to take what makes sense and just use what's useful, essentially. So anything we talk about here, that's the approach.
Yep.
But yeah, I love Big Magic. I recommended that to my husband, who's a creative as well,
Oh, cool.
and he loved it. I think he was surprised by how much he enjoyed it
Hmm.
also. It has a lightness to it that's really refreshing, I think.
Yeah. Or another one, if you haven't read, it's more for a writer, but it's still got a lot of lovely life lessons in it, is Bird by Bird and Lamont.
Mm.
That one's excellent too. Like that one's I've laughed out loud so many times just reading through that one. And it's kind of like I love good humor, and that type of a thing. But from a written standpoint, it takes a little extra nudge to get me to literally laugh out loud. And that one, she's just funny. Like she's just a really solid writer. And it's that same kind of underlying really strong, powerful life lessons and writing lessons and creative lessons, but at the same time with
Mhm.
a lightness that is similar to Big Magic.
That's cool. I don't know that one, so I'll have to check that
Yeah,
out.
add it to the list and then talk to me about it. I was used to be a teacher and lit major and stuff, so that one holds a special place in my
Ah,
repertoire.
that makes sense because you have a lot of book recommendations
Yeah,
every
I
time
love
we chat.
reading.
That's great. But you bring up a really good point about creating the space. I mean, anyone who feels like they just need to veg out, sometimes you just need a rest.
Hmm.
But when we're done resting or in the moments between when we want to process or when we want to just create active space, maybe, because I think that's what you're doing. Having something active can really, I think it's actually called active rest.
Hmm.
And it allows us to process in ways that, like being in the shower, like
Hmm.
intentionally creates that environment for us. I just want to point this out too. Like you mentioned, you're a doer, like creating a project is such a great way to do both
Hmm.
too. I'm a doer as well. So it helps me feel more purposeful if there's a product at the end of
Hmm.
what I'm doing. Also, like I like to create something while I'm processing. And I think a lot of creatives are that way. That's or artists, if you will, if you identify as an artist. It's a great way to remember that it can actually be leveraged in this way that feels it gets to feel good, which is something I say a lot. Like it doesn't have to be homework
Yeah.
to walk through all of this stuff. So yeah, one, thank you for sharing how this came about, the project itself. What keeps you motivated to continue to create it? Like what have you
Hmm.
almost like we have to like re-fall in love with the process sometimes when something starts in the way that you shared.
Yeah. Multiple levels. I think I'd have to start at why do I like to do it at all? So not even the recording part of it, but it's the hiking part of it. And it's
Mm.
just more important to me than the digital world. Like if anybody has followed me for any amount of time or like friends of mine know, like I'm joking, not joking about when my time comes. I don't, if you try to put me in a home, like we're going to have an issue and I need somebody to just drop me off at the edge of the woods of like Alaska or something and let me wander off and everything's going to be fine. Like don't try to find me. Things are good. I've had my wife at times, like once in a while, she's like, "Are you leaving?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Do you have a bug out bag? Like, are you ready to go right now? Like, are you just gonna disappear?" I'm like, "No, like, I love you guys. Like, I'm not gonna just leave
Oh
without
my
telling you."
God.
But it's like funny stuff like that, where I mean, it's like in joking, but at the same time, she's like, "How ready are you to just bust out of here?" Because I really do want to just make my money online and then disappear into the woods. And like that's a joint desire of my family too, fortunately, at least my wife. And so like as the kids grow older and stuff. So that's one piece of it where it's just like it just feels more important to me. I'm not saying it needs to be for everybody, but it does for me. And I just feel more whole and I feel like more of a human. And especially in a time frame now when so much stuff we can create. You don't know what's real. To be in a place that is real is important to me. Other things that come to mind is I've had these beautiful experiences with my son. And like I said, so he's 20 and we've done a bunch of trips. My daughter and I, like, this is the one that most people are like, wow, you've done this. Or say my 13-year-old and I, we started when she was 11 doing an annual daddy daughter backpacking trip with friends of ours. And so we've taken her she did like on the first one when she was 11 we hiked maybe 3-4 miles into the manistee trail here in michigan and got a good spot and stayed overnight and hiked out and that was kind of a big deal for her. And then when she was 12 we went and did south manitou island here in the michigan area where if you're not familiar with it there is absolutely nothing, like there's no electricity or anything on the island. And so we were supposed to be there for 2 nights, but we ended up only being able to do one. And then just this last year, we did Picture Rocks, where it was all in all, it was like probably 10 miles total, where we hiked about 5 in and then 5 out. But we were there for 2 nights right on the beach. And again, a gorgeous area. If you're not familiar with Pictured Rocks area, really hard to get the site. Like I had to get the site scheduled it in like January for August type of a thing, like that type of
Mm.
popularity. I took my 5 year old to her first car camp trip. It was like one of the rustic sites still, like where we drove in and set up the tent and all that. But she did that for the first time last fall with me. And then now my 3 year old's starting to show interest and she asked. And the thing is, I look at her and I'm like, I have to be in good enough shape to take her when she's 16, 17, 18. And so, I mean, it's a ways away from me at this point. And so it's why I'm like paying attention to how I eat and making sure I stay active and lifting and all these things because I have something to look forward to. So those are like some of the main drivers. Now, to actually answer your question, there's part of it that's just exciting because as somebody who loves learning, and you mentioned the curiosity thing, I got to experience what it feels like to be new again at
Mm.
something. And it's a space that I get to do that really all the time because I feel very inexperienced, even doing it 2 years now. Like I came to the table with 20 years worth of audio, but I never had to think about field recording. And so it's like you said, it's what equipment is going to be the best in this situation. You got to think about like a bunch of nerdy stuff that's really fun to put together, like self noise of microphones, because it matters way more in the outdoor space than it does like in this type of space. You have to think about types of mics, everything from binaural to shotgun to different stereo setups. Like, are you going to run an AB setup? Or are you going to run like with the ORTF, whatever it is, like all these different things, and then mixing it down afterwards. So there's all these new challenges that I never had to face before, even though I worked in the space, like just doing audio literally day in, day out with my team for 7 years or something up until this point. It was all brand new. And then the ability to help other people connect to something that I feel like matters and that I'm also passionate about, like knowing not everybody has really great areas to go hike or be out in where they live. Some people have to spend the majority of the time inside or in apartments or whatever it is. And so if I'm able to help bridge that connection for the people that actually like it but can't, or introduce interest of, oh wow, like these places exist or this is beautiful, and hopefully encourage others to go out and try it for themselves, like that's a huge hope of mine. And so bunch of reasons why I do it, and I don't see it going away anytime soon.
Yeah, it seems really interwoven in like the fabric of who you are
Yeah, I think so.
in many ways. That inspiration for others, does that like what are you hoping they glean from being inspired by maybe going into nature? Like are you hoping they also connect in the way that you are or find balance, or like what is the sort of hope?
I don't have a refined answer for that one, but I do default back to just the human piece. That one's always been important because it's so easy. It's just extremely easy, I think, to get lost in the digital landscape. I think it's more
Yeah.
tempting than ever, like as you continue to have everything from video game to AI to virtual worlds to all this stuff. Again, I'm not going to sit and be doom and gloom, but like anything, there's tons of pros and cons. And I think if we're not careful, the line gets blurred and it's easy. Like I said, just the feeling to me feels lost. And it's like, yeah, you can literally get lost in the woods, but, but like that's, oh, I'd rather be there. And I could tell lost stories of being in different places. And so it's just a feeling, like a sense of self, I hope people can get. And like you mentioned, it is healing and it's energizing and it's peaceful. And so it's like, if I can help somebody, especially somebody who's never been able to experience it for whatever reason, like I was talking to my wife about it a little bit the other day, where it's like my son likes fishing a lot. My 5-year-old has shown interest in fishing. Nobody really ever showed me how to fish. And so I know like fishing's sort of easy to a degree and stupid to get started, but I do feel somewhat inept. Like I'm not able to do my due diligence as a father to partake in this thing that they enjoy because it's like really outside of my, like I do it and I'm comfortable with it, but it's still outside
Mhm.
of my wheelhouse. I think of this in the same way where some people just, they hear the stories of me taking the kids out and they're like, holy crap, like I wouldn't even do that myself, let alone have my young teen go and backpack for 2 days and carry a 25-pound bag on her back and like all this stuff. Like it's kind of a shock to some people. And so if I can help bridge that gap to make it possible and to go, no, like it's realistic. Like if you don't
Mhm.
have to do it, but if you want to, here's some ideas or here's some inspiration. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I think sense of self and connection with self through just exploring. And I think you get confidence. Like you're kind of touching on like what it
Mm,
takes to
mm-hmm.
feel confident to go out and do something that you feel might be out of your wheelhouse, like your example with fishing. And to that, what would you suggest someone get started with if they are, I mean, they're probably not
Yeah.
going to jump straight to like
Yeah.
backpacking
Don't.
and spending
No,
the night.
just like easy stuff. Like, I mean, again, it really depends on geographical location and things. But just go to the park. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
really not any more complicated than whatever nature you have near you, whether it's like we have a nature sanctuary, fortunately, really close to our house. In Michigan, we have a ton of like lakes and trails and things. There's a bunch of different parks and all of it. So it's like whatever you have access to, just start by going there and sitting. Don't do anything else for like 20 minutes. And even if that feels like sometimes that might be too loud, like your head might get too loud to just sit there and do nothing. But like do your best to just leave your phone in the car, even your book in the car, like whatever it is, and sit for 10 minutes, sit for 15 minutes and see what comes up. And then maybe the next time, like go for a short walk. And then as you want to get even more, like another baby step for me is I love the All Trails app. Like I've discovered so many really great places. There's the Gaia app has one where it's like GAIA, I think, or All Trails has one. They list off all the trails that are
Mm.
everywhere. And so you can find like pick an easy one.
Mm.
Pick something that's like no elevation and maybe half a mile long or whatever it is you're capable of or where you want to start. Like take those kinds of baby steps and see what happens. And like again, maybe you'll find out that it's not your thing, and that's totally fine. Or maybe you want to have a purpose, like you become a bird watcher or something. Like there's like so many different facets. Like I said, I love the backpacking and hiking route. To me, that's really fun and important. But there's so many different ways to. I mean, it could be anything for even from like frisbee golf. Like I don't care. Like it could just be something. Like just find a way to get
Yeah.
outside. Maybe you go surfing. Like maybe that's your release. I know a couple different entrepreneurs that like that's their jam. So there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, you're reminding me that when I lived in a more like urban neighborhood, right now we're kind of in the country, but there was an archery park behind my apartment that I didn't realize was there because you can't really see it. It was like tucked below the street level. And so I took up archery for a bit, and it was my favorite thing
Mm-hmm.
to go give myself. It was felt like this like secret that I had that I would just do on my own. And just sitting out there was such a lovely time. And I did that for,
That's
I
so
don't
good.
know,
Yeah.
maybe 4 years for a while when it was convenient to be there. And it's just such a special place. It's in Pasadena, in South Pasadena, for anyone who's local that wants to check that out. But that was the way I did it. And then also, if you have a
Mm-hmm.
backyard or even a porch, like sometimes just sitting outside is a step into separating yourself from, you just have to not really be
Yeah.
inside the phone while we're doing that, right? Like, don't go outside and just look at your phone the whole time. Like, I think just listen
Mm.
and just see what you hear. Like, something simple like that for even 10 minutes can be really eye opening and connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Like I'll interject there too, where it's like your listener, you may already do this with like music, where it's fun for me as a musician to listen to a piece and then go, okay, lead guitar, rhythm guitar. Oh, what's that? I think that's a synth. Okay. It sounds like they got drums here, but they probably sampled
Yeah.
them. And like you start dissecting and you listen for the different pieces and things. If you're not familiar with it, most people aren't. Like I took me forever to figure this out, but you start to hear that with nature, where you're like, oh, okay, there's a cicada or there's a spring peeper, and okay, here's some wind, and all right, I hear something off in the distance over there. What kind of bird is that? And oh, I can hear the ambience of the highway, like that's further out. And I remember the first time that it really struck me was I
Mm.
think the fall. It was like the winter time ish of here in Grand Rapids, and I was listening and it was super windy and it was late November. And the thing is with here, with our region, it's like we have either the pine trees or the regular trees. And there happened to be some leaves left over and it was just whistling through and I heard them and then I realized I'm like, this is probably the last night that I'm going to hear wind blowing through leaves because they all blow off the trees and they're just barren. And it's part of the reason that why our winters are so quiet is because there's not the wind blowing through. And so I purposely got out my equipment and I was just on my deck. But it was like in that moment, realizing like, this is the last time I'm going to hear this sound until spring. Like that was so cool. And it had nothing to do with me. It was just the first time that I caught that. And so, like you're saying, my wife and I will do that frequently. We just have two lawn chairs. We'll bring them out and it's like, oh, hey, you want to go have coffee outside? It's like, sure. We'll either sit on the deck or go out in the front and let the kids run around and play. And then we're just sitting barefoot in the grass and not even really talking and just kind of listening to whatever's going on. Like it makes a huge difference.
That's so beautiful. What an interesting thing to notice. And I do think I'm listening to you talk, and I do feel like this level of like deepening, you're kind of deepening your
Oh,
awareness
100%.
to be able to pick that out. And that
Hmm.
comes from practicing, like being in nature and listening. And you have a project literally that is designed to do that. And for you to translate that from like, oh, there's all these 5 things I'm identifying. I'm going to
Hmm.
have to process that in post, which like really pulls apart the awareness. I'm wondering how, or if you've noticed this translating back into how you approach
Yeah.
the work within the agency in just like an interview style show and or just your process with work in general.
Yeah, so a few things to even elaborate on what you're saying. Take something like, again, this is where equipment gets interesting and fun. You take something like a shotgun microphone. It's those long tube looking mics, if you're not familiar with one, and they're extremely directional. Like you could pinpoint something out with the right one. You could pinpoint something out like 50 yards out and or I don't know how many meters, roughly whatever you want to translate that to, metric or whatever, 50 of those. So far away and you're pointing at it, it'll pick it up. And so there's certain episodes that I've had where I've been just walking through the woods with a shotgun microphone and you point it at the ground and it's this complete world. Like it's this landscape of crunching through leaves. You walk by the stream, you scare a couple frogs, the frogs jump in, you hear the little bloop, bloop, bloop of them and
Wow.
like the different things going on. You turn and you point that up at the canopy, like up at the above you, the world above you. You're hearing ambience of planes, birds flittering around, wind through trees. It's like a completely different space. It's almost like an
Wow.
Avatar movie or something. Like you got the water world and you got the other
Yeah.
living in the forest world and like all these different things. And so that's wild. And so you do get an awareness. It's like Jason Bourne level type stuff
Mhm.
as you do this more. And I think I've had, like, just to be fair too, I had a predisposition to this, like growing up. Like I've always been kind of aware of my surroundings just because of some of the ways that I grew up and what I kind of went through growing up. So you'd
Yeah.
become more aware of what's going on in other people. But this is different. And it absolutely has come back to all of my relationships, really, where I can listen better now. I think I'm quieter now because I know I'm listening. Like it's like more of a true active listening and being aware that I'm active listening. You listen for the nuances. Like the other unfair advantage I think I have, just to be fair, like to have 600 plus interviews, like you start to just pick up patterns in people. And so you realize and you learn it's like they might say something, but that's not really what they mean. Or they say something and it's just a little note, like it's just a little like twinkle of they want to talk about it, but you're not 100%. Like if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't have caught it.
Yeah.
And you even kind of have done that. Like you've picked up on little specifics that I've said so far, and so that's a unique trait. Like I can see you actively doing it, but it's like that kind of stuff. So 100% it has helped me, everything from hear more clearly, active listen better, be able to respond better because I have just a much higher sense of what's actually going on or what's actually being said. It's the fruits are huge. It's super huge.
Yeah, I love that translation into like human communication. I mean, it sounds unrelated if you were to write it down, like, I'm going to go into nature so I can be a better interviewer
Yeah, no,
or like
you
a better
100%.
listener. Yeah. Like it doesn't quite, you're like, okay, well, that's an interesting way to go about that. But
Hmm.
it does come back to, I mean, I think anything we do like that as a practice, particularly when has a self connection piece, has to translate into the way that we then reapproach connection with everything else that we interact with.
Hmm.
And I just think listening is such a powerful shifting tool that in itself creates space. Like we're talking about creating space to process.
Hmm.
You're now like paying it forward in a lot of ways because you're able to listen in a way that creates space for someone else to process.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this exchange. I love my podcast for that. It gives me the opportunity to process and it gives others the opportunity to process. And then the listener gets that too. It's just a lovely, like, ripple effect of doing something that already brings you joy and then bringing it back into a space like this to have that ripple effect.
Yeah, it's very mindful. Like I've kind of, that's the word that's come to mind as I've experienced this with you so far. It's refreshing for somebody like me for a lot of the same reasons that I said I choose to do that show, that I choose to do a field recording show, because it's so easy to, I was talking to somebody on my team about this literally like an hour ago before I cut on this call, and just looking at like in a lot of ways we live in such a templated world, and there's so many like, oh, this is the best practice for that, and this is the definitively best answer for this, and I can create automations and systems, and I'll give, like, don't get me wrong, like I love a good system, like I want to be efficient, I want to help people seamlessly, but there comes a point when, like, really, like, is this the best way to go about it, and that type of a thing. And so to be able to go off the beaten path instead of me talking about like, here's how you create ROI with a podcast, or here's how you
Yeah.
leverage this medium to build the best relationships, but just to kind of talk about what is actually on my mind, like what to me like actually feels like is more important, and then the reasons of what motivates me to do all the stuff that like my audience sees in that, like you mentioned earlier, quote unquote sterile environment. It's probably part of the authenticity of why it comes through, because I just get so irritated with social, like a lot of people, so many times, and I'll just post stuff on purpose that's like dumb or whatever it is. I was like super pissed the other day about the smiling face trend, where it's like, if you take a selfie, you're guaranteed to get interaction. And so I posted a picture of the back of my head. So I was just mad about the whole thing. So it's like stuff like that where people, if they're paying attention, like you just get that small 5%, and they're like, oh, that's kind of funny, I want to connect with this guy. So it's like, that's who I hope to connect with. And then something like this, like I said, is just refreshing for a lot of those same reasons.
That's very artist rebellion like nature. Like we do that. We're like, oh, that's the rule book. I don't want that. Like I'm going to
Yeah.
specifically not do that because you said that that's how it has to be done. And I'm going to show you why it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I do that constantly as well. And it's so funny because maybe that template is great, but I will reject it first because you
Yeah.
told me that it's supposed to be the way. I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe it's
Or
not
when
though.
everybody's doing it, it's like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
then like, oh, I'll just go over here and do this other thing. And
yeah.
I'm so with you on that. And it is fun to kind of see what comes of those
Yeah.
fun
Yeah.
moments.
You poke the beehive every once in a while and see what goes on. My, like, another example, it's like I said, it's just that really low key kind of dry stuff that's fun for me, where I have one of our, like, our diaper bag. It's my gym bag now, but when it was our diaper bag, it was funnier. And it's just like this really killer. That's another thing I could nerd out about is bags, like how stereotypically some women really like shoes. For example, I love me a good bag, like a proper
I love that.
backpacking bag or gear bag or whatever it is. Like I could nerd out about that all day. So I had one that you could put it had the Molly patches on it, and you could do like the different meme patches. And so if you've ever seen the one where it's the goose holding the knife, and then it says
Mhm.
peace was never an option. It's like such an obscure meme. Like it's referencing like this dumb picture, and then it's actually a quote from X-Men, and like all these things that don't make sense. And so I had that on the diaper bag, and my wife was always like, why do you have that on our diaper bag? And I'm like, because it's funny. And one person out of 100 will look at it and smirk to themselves, and I'll make their day, and they'll actually get it. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's what I want to live for. It's like those moments of the people that are aware and paying attention, and then they're like, oh, that's funny.
The irony, the ironic humor.
Yep. Love
Yeah.
it. Bring it on all day.
I think my humor is super strange as well. And the only person that tends to get my jokes is myself. So I'm with you on that. I think I'm hilarious. But it's the quirky stuff. Yeah. It's like, let's see who gets that. This is like some literature joke that like
Mm-hmm.
only some nerd will understand.
Yeah, no, I've done that. There was a show, I still might do it. The literature nerd in me, like in a not a funny way, but I'm purposely, I'll share it on here because obviously it's only like certain amounts of certain pockets of your audience will see it. If you're listening to this and then you go listen to my show that I'm currently actively producing, this will be a fun Easter egg for you. Is that I want to start, it's going to have a narrative style to it, but I'm going to purposely pull from a ton of classic literature and just look at the opening paragraph, like opening paragraph or two, and then
Mhm.
rewrite it in a way that I can open my show with it. And so it's just like a little nod or a little homage that
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything about otherwise, but if people are paying attention, they're like, is that 1984? Like,
I
did he
love
just open
that.
with Orwell? Like that type of a thing, just because it's fun. Like, and then I get to weave in those things that, like you said, that it's such a big part of my life. Like I love reading. I have almost a master's in lit and like all this stuff. So like, why not? Let's have some fun with it.
That's really cool. So is that a new project you're working on that's not out yet?
I've been sitting on it for a while, but it's been tough because I just had to prioritize other things. Like, like the whole
do
whatever
now.
cobbler shoe issue, but it's essentially the first podcast that I've gotten interested in again since mine that's in the interview style. And it's kind of almost a philosophy of creating and making to a
Mhm.
degree where right now the working title is just create a story of practice and craft. And I'm purposely interviewing intentional people to dive into ideas that relate really uniquely to them. And so an example would be a friend of mine, I'll leave him nameless for now, but had a company, big company, had to sell. And so I interviewed right after he sold, like about when is it the right time to quit? Like, and so that was that idea, was
Yeah.
the main theme. Another friend of mine, she is eyes deep in customer research and all of that type of a thing and having that craft your messages. And so I had a
Mhm.
conversation, good, solid conversation with her about when do you make for other people versus when do you make for yourself? And like those types of things. So these different specialists. And then I will get to a point too where I'm like just interviewing people in the trades and all of those things about like just why do you do what you do and looking at it as hopefully a means of motivation and then my own reflections on it. Like it'll have a dynamic element to it. It won't be a full blown narrative, but definitely have breakout points of me talking about things. And again, something that I can just get behind. And then there's practical things too from a company standpoint. That knob will be turned on, just not all the way, where it's like it'll be able to show off the kind of show and quality that my team can do and those
Mhm.
sorts of elements as well. So we'll have a bit more of a business connection than say Outdoor Sounds does, but it's still not the main focus. Like for me, it's more the relationship and exploring something that I think is important, especially in a time frame when so much stuff can be just automated or created instantly. Like, what is the role of an artist or a maker or a creator nowadays?
Yeah, I love that. That speaks to me and I think my audience as well. So when that releases, you'll have to let me know and then I can add it into these show notes when it's ready so they can link
Cool.
right to
Yeah,
it.
I'd appreciate that. That'd be fun.
Yeah, yeah. We can always update those. That's the beauty of show notes. Yeah, I mean, I have so many thoughts. I mean, that's an inspiring project. And I love, again, thinking high level, like how it can connect to the business, but also how we can have creative fun while we're making something that is supposed to serve, kind of like speaks to what you're doing in the sense of when do we make for ourselves? When do we make for others? And how do those two things come together? I mean, this is kind of how you and I got connected was around this idea
Mm-hmm.
and what I'm in the middle of at the moment too, because I'm building a new leg of my business, which
Mm-hmm.
is the same name of this podcast. And it's that same idea of like, it's so much of me, but it has to serve the audience too. And I
Yeah.
think there's a way to do that really organically. And that exploration really happens here on this show. So I'm with you on that
Yeah.
level of bringing in conversations that feed that idea in a lot of ways and aren't necessarily as linear as the templated life and business world we live in right now. So this is my step away from that too in a lot of ways, which has
Mm-hmm.
always been the case. I don't and it's like where does the structure go and how much of it do you need? And
Yeah.
like when do you implement, when do you look outward and when do you come back to look inward to create again? And it's this interesting ebb and flow that I think is
Mm-hmm.
constant. So I love that you're kind of exploring that too in this potential new project.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. It's funny to have these conversations because, like, if you take it from again, say your listener, if they are familiar with something like an EOS framework,
Tell us what that is real quick and then
I almost didn't want to say it because I was afraid I was going to screw it up. Like entrepreneurs organization system. And
okay.
so it's basically a framework in which you can run your business. And so it's sort of like another one that's very popular is the Scaling Up book by Vern Harnish. And it kind of follows Rockefeller habits. And again, another business framework on how to run your business well. And there was a piece of it where they're talking about in EOS specifically, it talks about the different roles that you can have in your company. And it's like the CEO role and accounting and marketing and sales and all the stuff you normally think of. But they break up the CEO role really as visionary and integrator. And the visionary is the person that's like the dreamer. And then the integrator is the person that's kind of like boots on the ground getting stuff done, or like, how are we pulling this off? And I bring it up because I originally was and really have been for a super long time. Like that's my default is more integrator than visionary. And over time, I've had to teach myself. I wouldn't say teach myself might be a little more blunt than what it actually was, but I've learned to be a much better visionary and I've become more comfortable in that role. And so things that help, again, as like an experience share, things that help me is having a good person in operations, because I could sit and do that all day, but it's not super fulfilling all the time. And so there's two different personality tests that I think show this really, really well. There's Gallup Pulse Strength Finders, and then it tells you about what you're strong at. But then there's another one that's a little bit lesser known, in my opinion, called Motivational Code, or M Code for short. And it talks about what motivates you. And so it's
Mhm.
not always the same. And so something that I'm extremely good at and I'm aware of is building systems that get you to clear outcomes, but it doesn't motivate me per se. The learning does, and getting stuff done does, but not just building a system. And
Mhm.
so having an ops person in place, as somebody that's helping me with the big picture, how are we running, and then smaller picture, like day to day, it gives me an opportunity to get that off my plate and then
Yeah.
still fulfill similar or adjacent or complementary type roles, and then have the space for things like this, where a huge piece for a lot of owners and founders is the ability to just think and dream. And when you start looking at some of the biggest players, they dedicate a significant amount of time to their calendar of just leaving it open and not making 1,000 commitments and everything, and not, you don't always have that luxury as a business owner. Like, a lot of the time you do have to hustle and that kind of a thing. But if you can find yourself in a place where your team is able to help you, or you are able to build in systems or automations that help to, with the goal of this, to get a little more free and to dream a little and to do these things that we're talking about, or give yourself outs, like, so you're not doing the same thing day in and day out. Like, just find a weird hobby, like pick up
Yeah.
magic, like play a board game, like I said, go disc golfing, like whatever it might be, just to, there's a name for it, but even in the creative space, when you start doing these adjacent tasks, do you remember what it's called when you do
Mhm.
like an adjacent creative activity? It's like, there's a couple writers, for example, like when they felt stumped, they would go and like paint, and they would just paint for a
Yeah.
couple hours, and then after a while they got unstuck and they went back to writing. And so it's like those types of ideas, but create however you need to, space in your life to just break up the monotony and have a little fun. Because I mean, at the end of the day, there's certain stuff that I don't want to do as a business owner, and I'm not going to. And if that means like I run my business into the ground because I'm not willing to do this thing that makes me miserable, then fine. Like, I'll go get a job at Lowe's or Home Depot or something. Like,
Right.
I'll be all right. So we'll make it. I was joking with the family just the other day. I forget why. I think somebody had an apocalypse dream, and I'm like, that would be amazing. Like, I wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. I'd get to spend all my time outside. Like,
Mm.
like, yes, bring on the apocalypse. That'd be so much more relaxing than what I'm doing now, for sure. And my
Oh my
kids were all like, you're nuts. And I'm like, whatever, we're also prepared. So
Oh my gosh, you said so many things there. There's so much there.
I should
Um,
I should have paused. I
no,
apologize.
no, it's great. I mean, it's all so connected though. And it makes sense that it's like this idea to this idea, because it comes back to the theme I think that we've created, which is space, like how to create space and how to
Hmm.
create that ratio of, what I call zone of excellence versus zone of genius. So zone of genius, like the stuff that is easy, motivates you, you can do all day long. Like you could just
Mm-hmm.
walk around in nature all day long and it just fills you up and it doesn't
Yep.
drain you at all. It's energizing. And then the zone of excellence stuff is shit that you're great at, that you can do, but there's a finite amount of hours that you're able to do it before it really drains you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of just like my quick bucket way to be like, which bucket does it go in? Like, just to help someone understand like how much time they should spend in each
Mm-hmm.
bucket. And like, just to oversimplify it for a moment, right? If someone's listening, they've listened to me for a bit, they've heard this before. So this is my translation for them as well. But I think understanding then, like, okay, how much time do I need to be in each area? And then how much time do I need to be in each area to serve the purpose and goal in front of me? And is that goal seasonal? Like, is this a big picture goal that's going to last a really long time? Then those ratios really have to be calibrated differently.
Mm-hmm.
Or am I just learning something new? So it feels really hard right now, and it will feel hard for at least 6 months or whatever it is, And it's like really understanding, like putting things into these categories, I think can help us know when it's time to be more visionary, when it's time to create a lot more space, or when it's time to set up all of the systems so that you can take that space, which I did a lot of this year. So I actually have a lot of that space right now to
Oh,
be
good.
in the vision, and everything's operating without me, which is beautiful. And I can just check in. I'm there to like, I feel like I'm a consultant at my own agency.
It's a good place to be.
Which is really nice. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it was supposed to be like this whole time. But I had to give up a lot of ideas about how it should go, which is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I didn't think that that was the thing I had to do to figure this part out for it to get easier. Was like just to like surrender that like maybe it's fine. Like it's so
Mm-hmm.
weird. And just to get to the place of like, hey, if the apocalypse happens tomorrow and I lose everything, like I'll be okay. And
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't mean I failed. Like really letting go of that failure complex was part of my journey. Like, did I fail? Like, did I fuck this up? And
Mm-hmm.
realizing that no, I didn't. It's just a lot of other things that I needed to sort out and put in the right buckets, and figuring out what space and time I'm in now and what I want to create next. And that the business is actually just fine. It's
Mm-hmm.
sort of an interesting journey to emotionally walk through. I think because we have all of this noise and all of these, like, you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that. And
Yep.
how, if you're not growing, like, you're failing. If you're not, all of these ideas around how it should go, which brings me back to this idea of like knowing yourself enough, like having those moments of space and self connection so that we can each understand like which part of the journey are we in right now for what we want to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
and really like creating like, okay, that template works right now for this, or I don't need a template right now, I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
fine. Really kind of having the confidence and self-trust to have the discernment.
Mm-hmm. You remind me of the phrase, what got you here won't get you there.
Right.
I've heard that one too. It's kind of in the same vein, where to be open to change and adapting, and
Yeah.
a lot of things that we're typically reluctant to.
It's interesting because cognitively, I understand that concept completely. But to put it in practice is like a whole nother thing. It's like we're not really talking about how that happens. So I'm having more conversations here lately about like how do we actually put these things in practice, because things feel really cloudy when we're in a moment that needs to change. So then
Mm-hmm.
how do we come to a place of action that feels good when we are feeling like maybe I did it wrong?
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Now you remind me of the other one of the longest journey is from the head to the heart. That one too is a biggie, where
Yeah.
you intellectually understand something, but to really like believe it or live it is sometimes a bit of a slog.
Yeah. But, I do think it can be simple, and go outside, create the space, give
Mm-hmm.
yourself a break from trying to figure it out. And I do think there's so much beauty in that. And that's our long winded way of coming back to that simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for someone who is trying to just create a little more space, because I think a lot of people, I personally deal with like perfectionism and guilt and like all of these things that come with creating space just for me can get in the way of that. I think some people that are listening are struggling with that too. Like, what would you say? How can they get started with that?
How can you get started with creating space? That's what you're
Yeah, just
asking.
granting yourself permission to actually create space that feels nice.
In college, I had a professor, my capstone professor, who I very much respected. He was an interesting gentleman, taught at a really master level with a lot of things, and had some kids. And like even one semester, it was like a semester or two, he just completely took off simply to study poetry. And I mean, he's like a 50 something year old guy at this point, and that type of a thing. There's a lot of choices and life decisions I found really inspirational. And so I met with him occasionally. And there was one time that I was like, oh man, I forget even what it was, but it was like, there's this thing that I really want to do, and I know I need to do it, but I'm just having such a hard time getting there. And he's like, hey, can I give you some advice? I was like, yeah, no, that'd be fine. He's like, just do it. And it was literally that simple. And I don't know how to answer your question beyond that, because if there's something in your life right now that you know you need, or even you think you need, you have a hunch that maybe you need it, you owe it to yourself and the people around you to try. It's probably similar to
Hmm.
love others as you love yourself, if you're a religious person, or the phrase of like, put your own mask on first, if you're talking
Mhm.
about airplane failure. Like, so
Survival.
whatever it is that's going to be your motivation to just take a minute to take care of yourself. Most of the time, like, as long as you're not being selfish with it, where most of us aren't, like, if you're feeling guilty about it, chances are you're probably not being selfish about it, is my guess. But just go for it. I just had a conversation today with one of my people who, she works for us and then she works for herself, with some other clients. And she's like, yeah, I really could use a break. And I'm like, okay, when's your next break? She's like, I got a wedding in November. And I'm like, no, like, can you get a 3-day weekend in? Can like you give yourself that? And she's like, yeah, I probably should. I could rearrange a couple things. And I'm like, okay, good. You're going to let me know by September 5th if you got this off or not, or if you figured it out. And she's like, all right, deal. And it just took like that little nudge.
Mm.
But I don't know. Let this conversation be your little nudge. If you need something like this, start small, make it doable, but just do it. Like, you don't have a whole lot to lose. Like, what? You lose a half a day, like a little bit of time. I think you'll be all right. So
So Nike for the win. Just do it.
yeah, I know. It's so dumb. Like, it's so stupid that it's a Nike, but, and he's like not even like that. Like I said, he's this poetic literary guy, and that was his advice. But that one has stuck with me because there's a lot of situations where I'm like, oh, I should do this thing, and it's kind of hard. And I'm like, it's so dumb. Just do it. Like, there's no reason for me not to. Whether you're
Yeah.
talking about some major conversation you need to have with a loved one, or you're scared to do that karaoke song on the weekend, like, just
Mm.
go for it. It's gonna happen. It's all good.
Yeah, I'll just add to that in sharing that turning it into a question can help your brain process it differently. So if you were said, what if I did it anyway?
Hmm.
Is a way to incorporate just more expansiveness around, because in your brain's like, well, I have no reason to not do it, I guess. It just
Mm-hmm.
will try to answer it for you. So if there's no reason to not do it, when you ask the question, oftentimes it frees you up to move forward in a simple, gentle way.
Yeah. I was gonna say, to steal from Big Magic that we were talking about earlier, like, she had the one where a lot of people are like, what would you do if you knew you weren't gonna fail? And
Yes, I love that
instead
one.
she argues, actually it's more powerful. What if we flipped it and you said, what would you do if you knew you were gonna fail? And then it starts to really like clear lines of what is important to you, and what doesn't matter, what isn't hinged on this concept of failure or whatever. Like, what kind of actions do you want to live? And
Yeah.
I think back to when I first started my company at all, and the name came from a quote. It was actually a quote I read it's like quoted in a book, and it was, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what the world, or what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who have come alive."
Mhm.
And I just thought about that for a long time, and I had some things happen. I used to be a teacher, and I had some things happen that sort of prompted me to potentially get out of it at the time. And I just remember really distinctly, like, looking back, and would rather live with a why not attitude than a why, and to
Mm.
not want to be old and look back and go, oh man, I wish I would have did this, and I wish I would have done that. It's like, at the time, we had 2 kids at the time, and it was, or my 13-year-old was like 1 or 2, and it was just my income was the only thing that was floating us. And so it's like, yeah, I think we got about 6 months. Like, if I get no work at all whatsoever, we could live about 6 months, and then what's the worst thing that could happen? I go back to teaching.
Yeah.
And like, we've had ups and downs and stuff for sure. Like, I think I've ran out of money a couple times, but for the most part, like, we're still here, we're still kicking, and it's
Yeah.
given me a life that I'm very, very grateful for. So can't complain. And it's been because just trying to be open to these things that are big and scary sometimes.
Yeah. My biggest fear is regret. I'd
Mm.
rather do it and find out, I've realized, than look back and go, I didn't try. I didn't do
Mm.
it. It didn't do it. One of my core fears is living a life of regret, which I don't really regret any parts of my life, but I'm worried that I won't do the things that I know are part of who I am. And so I try to show up with that as much as I can every day. Like, am I doing the things that I want to do that lead me towards the bigger picture of what those are? The other thing I wanted to reflect on that you shared was this idea of fucking it up, like going out there to fail, like doing it to fail.
Mm.
When I have a new client, I celebrate with them when something goes wrong, like the first time something goes super wrong. And then I'm like, that's amazing because now we did that. Like we did that. That's your big milestone. That's a milestone. It means you're pushing yourself. It means you're trying. It means you're doing something out of your comfort zone. It means you're in a new process. There's so much like amazingness that comes out of that. And I have the confidence because I'm guiding them. So I know what comes next. So we can be in like a good like confidence moment with the guidance structure part that I can walk them through. But like it's such a cool thing to be able to celebrate the failure and put it behind us in a sense and be like, okay, that probably won't happen again. And the fact that you did and it's behind us is like one, a good thing. And then two, it means we're doing something right because we're pushing ourselves into a new space. You know, we're growing. Sure. It's kind of a fun thing. So all that said, how can we connect with you? I'll put the podcast in the show notes, of course, but any other ways that you would like someone to reach out or work with you?
Yeah, I'll just give you two. If you want to connect with me on the sterile front, you can find me on LinkedIn as Jeff Large. I think mine is just the whatever / Jeff Large or whatever the URL is for LinkedIn. But yeah, you'll find me. And then if you want to check out my company, it's comealivecreative.com. So those two are perfectly fine. And between those two things, you'll be able to get to everything else we're doing.
Well, now I get the name of your company because you just shared the quote. Is that where the name came from?
Yep.
All right. Love that. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for chatting with me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Boss Goddess podcast. And if you're ready to get started in exploring podcasting as an option for your next step to clarity, confidence, and maybe even the very foundation that will become your next brand or business, then go to boss-goddess.co/activate to get 5 days of gentle guidance and resources from me that will tap into your magic and your wisdom with my free Activate Your Goddess Era with Podcasting guidebook. Just go to boss-goddess.co/activate or click the link in the show notes.